How are you? How's it going? Good morning. Let's go over the news about what's happening around the world. Well, this time US SATCOM has released, a declassified video of what's been happening in this war that keeps going on. Let's get into the details of what's happening. They claim that the Iranians' military capabilities are decreasing, but the Iranian attacks continue, and so do the warnings. Let's get into the details of this. Well, an image that stands out this time, according to what's been reported. Well, a drone. This is in the Black Sea. Look at how far the drone is reaching. This is apparently against Admiral Grogorich, right? This is, one of these, let's say, from the Russian forces that are there in Crimea, right? According to what was reported during the night. From the Ukrainian unmanned systems forces, they attacked Admiral Grogorich, a guided missile frigate that is, very important for that region. This actually happened at Novoroskaya airport, right? It wasn't in Crimea because they left there a while ago. This was in Novoroskaya, already in Russian territory. That's where the ship is, let's say, right? Well, it's also part of the attacks in that war between Ukraine and Russia. Also, yeah. These images, according to reports, are from southern Russia. The flames from these, let's say, fires that broke out after some explosions that have been happening on the ship I mentioned, right? That's the ship, the one that's burning in the background. Well, that's also part of what's happening. And look, that's the response. Do you see? That's the reply to other incoming drones. That's also part of what's happening in that region. And another image that stands out is this number of columns of fire, let's say, right? That are happening. According to what open source intel reports, this intelligence account that says, there have been strong explosions. Are they aware of that? From what can be seen, it would be in the capital. This was posted by Bahid, a person named Bahid. Well, when you know who posted it, it's good to mention who did it. And this time, listen to this. All right? What you're hearing is a huge gas leak. It's something that hasn't exploded. According to the reports, that's what they're saying. For 30 minutes, you could hear that gas leak, a main gas pipeline that had apparently been damaged. It caused very strong smells inside Tehran, a smell of gas and sulfur, according to reports. Also, there was a landslide. This happened in Iturbide, here in Nuevo Leon. A landslide occurred very close to here. This also draws attention. In these last few days, that was yesterday when they reported this. Also, this is in Durango here in Mexico, a heavy hailstorm and bad weather that occurred in that area. Also, this image, let's listen to this. The audio is very low, but according to reports, this would be in Tel Aviv. Iranian missiles were reportedly attacking different points of the capital there in Israel, according to what is being reported. Emergency services have been active, according to what's available. Some fires have also been reported in certain areas as part of this conflict that continues to spread. Another image that draws attention is this one. Here it is. The area known as the Babco Energy Facility in Bahrain was reportedly attacked. A storage facility was set on fire, and that's also part of what's happening. They keep attacking the Gulf countries and continue causing these kinds of problems. Also, what we're seeing here is an attack by the United States Navy that reportedly hit Casero in the province of... This is a garrison of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Special Forces. According to reports, the attack or what happened after the attack caused this, which looks like fog, but they say it's not fog. It's actually smoke. From attacks reportedly carried out by the United States-Israel coalition. That was also an attack reportedly with fighter jets, very close by the way to this area. Where the pilot was found, that's also part of what's happening. This is also a good moment according to Channel 12, which reportedly reported a series of attacks, 8 hours of attacks on Haifa. It says 8 hours of operations have been carried out to identify and rescue any possible victims in that area. By the way, happy start of the week. Hope you're all well. It's been intense. Honestly, this weekend has been intense. By the way, Among these images that have been appearing, there's an image of an earthquake that happened in the Philippines where you can actually see it. You can see the movement there. Look on the left. On the left side, you can see this pretty intense movement. It wasn't that extreme in terms of activity. As for intensity, it was a 5.4 according to reports. But you can see here that it definitely gave a scare to the people who were in this place. You can see the movement. It lasted for a little while. Honestly, that's the situation. And well, it's also an image that has caught people's attention. Let me see if I can show it here. What we're seeing here, these little plants, well, they're not being illuminated. I mean, the light you see on them is a light that it has generated. Look, you can see it better here. According to what Nexter reports, Chinese scientists have created plants that glow in the dark. This is very much in the style of science fiction movies like Avatar. No, according to the reports, they inserted firefly and fungal genes which allowed orchids, sunflowers, and chrysanthemums to emit light on their own. They don't need electricity, just water and care. Those plants are already being considered. As an alternative for public lighting in parks and public spaces, just imagine arriving in a city. You arrive in a city where all the gardens shine on their own. Suddenly there's a blackout and you still have at least some light. What they're showing is really impressive. Another image that stands out is this one. Well, the image of Moktawakan. I walked, but it's fake, made with artificial intelligence, and well, those are the kinds of things the Revolutionary Guard posts. They show him walking there with lots of effects and very cinematic music. No, I'm not going to show it here, but it does catch your attention, and he supposedly arrives at an elevator. Something like that opens up, and there are some maps there, right? And not just any maps, the maps that are in the back, right? Where that Moktava animation they made supposedly ends up. In the background on the map, you can see the Dimona nuclear plant, which isn't really a nuclear plant, but it is I mean, it's not a power plant. It's more like a reactor that's used in theory for all of Israel's nuclear weapons program in Dimona. Remember, there was already an attack there. Well, they put the map up as if to say that the next step is going to be attacking that nuclear plant. Well, that's also part of what these images are showing. By the way, let's move on to this next point. Surely they report that this individual was reportedly eliminated, a character we've already mentioned several times here, because he's a key figure for the Iranians, right? Surely they report it, and the official account of the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, Kazemi, Chief of Intelligence of the Revolutionary Guard. Imagine the Chief of Intelligence was reportedly eliminated, one of the highest ranking commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. He had accumulated extensive experience over the years. Kademi worked to promote terrorist attacks around the world and was responsible for monitoring Iranian civilians as part of the regime's crackdown on protests that have been taking place in that country. Well, quite a remarkable character. This is a person who had managed to escape across the border for quite some time, Israeli forces, because we have to remember that Israel has had a strategy of trying to eliminate certain figures who they know are not only key, but are also individuals who suddenly cause problems. Not only do they cause a lot of damage, but they also have attacks planned for the long term in the future. Let's say these are people who are operating for the future on several levels, who get involved in other countries and so on. It was something people had been warning about with this individual for quite some time. He's not the only one expected to be eliminated. There are several people at that level of intelligence, level of planning, and military operation. So that's why the fall of this individual is so important. By the way, the Iranians are also sending some strong messages. Look at what's next.
Close up. They're armed.
Let's play the audio. Here it goes. No.
It would be to respond to any such attack in kind. Our armed forces have made it clear that if Iran's infrastructure is attacked, we would respond in the same way. They, our armed forces, would target any similar infrastructure that belongs to or is in any way related to the United States or that contributes to its act of aggression against Iran. This is not something we would do voluntarily or of our own accord. This is something that is part of our defensive measures against their illegal act. I believe the American people have come to understand that this is not their war. This is a war chosen by US administrations, perhaps in the name of a genocidal regime.
Well, that's Iran's message. I mean, what Iran says is, first of all, that it doesn't want to negotiate. That's a point that I think is quite clear. Because last night, when we couldn't go on the air anymore, they were saying exactly that. The United States said, we're already negotiating a 45-day ceasefire. A few hours passed, and in the early morning, for us, the citizens' message appeared and they said, what are you talking about? Who said we're negotiating? We're not negotiating and we're not interested in negotiating. In the next few hours, it's not going to be an escalation. They say this is already, well, maybe the final battle, right? I don't know if I would call it the final battle, but that's the message out there, right? Of a supposed final battle. Entonces, so let's see what's happening. Because look, both the United States and Iran are getting ready for the next battle, which is just a few hours away because over there, the next day is about to begin. Let's see, it's 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's about 7 in the evening, more or less. It should be around that time. In a few more hours, it'll be midnight. And starting at midnight, in theory, the conflict would begin. The United States and Iran are on the verge of a direct military escalation if diplomatic negotiations fail in the next few hours. This will move to another level. The Strait of Hormuz, we'll talk about it in a moment, but it's still closed. Not only is it still closed, but they say there's a new order in the Strait of Hormuz. They use that term. Donald Trump issued an ultimatum after ultimatum after ultimatum. You know how he is. And he said, well, logically, in the next few hours, on Tuesday, they already have a plan. And well, they already have planned which targets they are going to bomb. It seems that, well, there is no negotiation. The Iranians themselves say there isn't any and that they are preparing for the next operation. Well, that's how they keep attacking. Images keep coming out of attacks on Bahrain, on the United Arab Emirates. Today we're going to talk to you. There are already countries that, well, in light of what's happening, they've said that the next operation is going to be, well, it's already about war, not diplomacy anymore, because up until now, the Arab countries have been very patient in the sense that they haven't officially attacked. They haven't launched an attack, sent planes, or fired missiles. And they have insisted that they don't want to do it, but now it seems like there's no other way out after so many attacks. Now, among the images that have been coming in, the focus is on these missiles. These missiles, according to reports, were seen heading toward Israel during the early morning hours. It's a topic that, with so many images, we're supposedly going to keep seeing, right? Because even though there is talk of constant attacks, for example, yesterday there were attacks on 4 countries that could be confirmed. At least it seems there is a 5th country, but at least Israel's United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, those places were reportedly attacked. It seems that Qatar and Saudi Arabia, I don't have any reports from that area, at least not from yesterday. April 5th, today is the 6th. Alright then, let's move on to the next point. How has everyone been? Isa Ibarra, how has Rosalinda been? Eliseo, and the whole community that's connected, thank you very much. Get your coffee ready. If you're just arriving, we're just getting started. There's a lot of information about what's happening here and about other matters as well, of course. Do you remember that case of an older woman who was kidnapped, right? Nancy Guthrie. Well, there's information about what's happening in that case. There's also information about what's happening with South Korea, North Korea, and there's a very interesting intelligence report. There's also a report about what's happening in an alleged air incident in Russia, where there's a certain person involved. Key for the military, right? You say you're unsure if it was an incident or something else? We'll talk about it in detail in a moment, right? But anyway, in the meantime, let's go over everything that's happening around the topic. Let's discuss the details about Israel, Iran, and the United States.
Recently, it was claimed that the OIA has identified a new underground enrichment facility in Isfahan. Can you tell us about that? No.
Iran itself declared it last year. They declared that there was one. It's a new facility, and we requested immediate access to it. We were granted access, but we never made it to that place because the 12-day war started. And that's why we couldn't see what kind of facility it was, whether it was an empty hole or a place already equipped with centrifuges and cascades. So we still need to see it. So,
What evidence do you have that there is an enrichment facility at that site?
none. I'm referring to Iran's statement that there is a facility and our request. It's already an object of interest.
Mind you, that's an interview with Rafael Grossi, just a short clip, obviously. This is an interview for PBS, by the way. In case you want to watch the whole thing, it's there. But I think the most important part is these few seconds where, well, he says, no, we haven't gone because they haven't let us into the nuclear facilities that are there. It's not that we saw them, it's that Iran showed them off. And that's why it's known that they're just there. There's no more information about that. It's very interesting and important, which is why he says it's of interest. So if you declared it, now you have to let us go see it. Well, if you want to, right? But if not, then an alert is raised. There are nuclear facilities there that we don't know what they're for. And while they could have been enriching there, there have been other visits to other regions where traces have been detected, and it's thanks to that that we know enrichment reached 60%, because traces of that level of enrichment have been found. But in the case of Isfahan, this means it's 100% a mystery. So maybe there they have 90% enrichment and everything ready for a nuclear weapon and we don't know it. Or maybe they have nothing as well. But it is. Let's say we're in the dark about the Iran issue in that area. And that part would be silographic. But at some point during the conflict, whatever it may be, to gain access to that area and see what's going on there. Because it seems that now things can be seen from many other angles. For example, you could look at it from an angle and say, hey, well, could it be that this whole conflict is also precisely for, well, to hide this part, or the opposite? To go open it, to go see what's really there? And they may have seen, in this case, Israeli intelligence, if they actually got in there, or American intelligence, or that of some other country. Maybe they managed to see something. And if that's the case, then it should be shared to better understand this situation. But it's very, at least to me, what Rafael Grossi says seems very interesting. Well, it remains a mystery. And if there's nothing, well, what can I say? That was a huge mistake. It would seem to me like a mistake by Iran, because at the end of the day, you'd be justifying something that you know is going to lead to a conflict just to create fear in the other. Maybe it works for you for a while, but after that, well, at some point it just doesn't anymore. But, well, we'll see about that with time. Who knows what will be in that area. Now, I'm more curious about the fact that they haven't gone to that specific place. It's really interesting now. Among these reactions that are happening, there's a comment coming from Israel about the topic. About, well, the oil. Let's listen.
Israel forcefully attacked Iran's largest petrochemical plant, which is responsible for half of its exports, after having struck the second main facility last week. Now, both facilities, which together are responsible for about 85% of Iran's petrochemical exports, have been put out of service and are not operational. It's a major economic blow worth billions. The Iranian regime. The petrochemical industry finances the Revolutionary Guard and its military power. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and I have instructed the Israel Defense Forces to continue striking with full force at the national infrastructure of the Iranian terrorist regime. The Iranian terrorist regime will find out that the continuation of aggression against Israel and the cowardly and criminal shooting against Israeli citizens will lead to greater economic and strategic damage that it will have to pay, as well as the weakening of its capabilities. I thank the brave commanders and soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces for their work and courage on all fronts.
Well, that's also part of what's happening in these reactions. Well, from both sides, we'll see as the live stream goes on. But if you're watching this live stream, I ask you to like and share it, right? Well, you can support in many ways, but I think these two are very easy, right? And of course, thanks to those who do it. Another very interesting thing is that, well, among all these reactions we're seeing, Donald Trump is constantly reacting angrily to everything that's happening. Listen to the following.
So I'm very upset with a certain group of people, and they're going to pay a high price for that. But the Iranian people will fight as soon as they know they won't be shot at and as soon as they can get weapons. If they had weapons, not many. If they had weapons, that would go in the other direction. And do you know what would happen? Iran would surrender in 2 seconds because they couldn't handle it. But in Iran, they have absolutely no weapons of any kind, and they've been told directly, if you go out into the streets, you will be killed. As of this morning, and we have this information from a very reliable source, 45,000 protesters have been killed. Pretty serious.
President, you know about the 45? Well, that's part of the comment. This is actually more about Iran. Today we'll show you other reactions from Trump, but this is about Iran. Thinking, and here I imagine that they're already there. There are two possibilities. Either they go in with troops or they pull back, but both could cause more internal problems. And that's what it seems like here, right? It seems like, well, maybe we don't want to continue with the war, but we're going to give weapons to some groups that are out there. But it's hard, really hard. It's not impossible, but I think it'd be difficult because, well, one thing is to go and protest as a civilian, and another very different thing is to go and organize as a military group, etc., etc. But, well, who knows, right? Who knows? The Kurds might be a group that's maybe more organized in that sense, but, well. Let's move on to other matters as well. Amid all this, mediators were reportedly pushing a supposed 45-day ceasefire, but at the same time, an operation inside Iran was already being prepared. Israel, for example, just to give you one example, shows this is far from any negotiation. South Pars was attacked. Do you remember South Pars, this place that has a name like South Park? Well, it's the area with the most gas and petrochemicals that the Iranians themselves have. Attacking this area, as we saw in some of the images at the beginning, really means they're not actually thinking about negotiating, right? I mean, this is near the nuclear plants. Let's see where it is. Here it is. That's the southern part, let's say, of Iran. There it is. That's inside Iran. That's in the very south. And according to what the Iranian defense minister reports, the Israeli defense minister, there would have been a new attack against South Pars, which is the largest petrochemical and gas plant in Iran, considered the energy heart of the country. The facility located in Asaluye produces approximately 50% of Iran's petrochemicals, so the strike has a direct economic impact, according to Israel's defense minister Yisrael Katz. The two main Iranian petrochemical plants have already been attacked and are out of service. These facilities account for about 85% of Iran's petrochemical exports, which would also mean losses of billions and billions of dollars. Well, that's also what happens with this conflict, right? It's a loss that's getting more and more significant, stronger. The issue of oil, the issue of gas, helium, and other problems, other topics like petrochemicals, right? Oil keeps going up. It hasn't stopped, although luckily it paused, because at one point, during the night, it seemed like it was going to go down here. It kept looking like it was heading down here, and then it ended up higher, like it closed on Friday. This is Friday. This is where it closed. It opened and kept going down. Why? They gave a lot of positive news. I mean for the price of oil. OPEC agreed that they are going to produce more, that Japan insists they have much more oil, that there was going to be a 45-day ceasefire agreement. I mean, they put all that together and dropped it on us all at once during the night. They said it was all supposedly positive news to lower oil prices, but it wasn't enough. And now hours have passed. Now you start seeing the attacks, you start seeing the reactions, you start realizing there's no negotiation. There's an attack on this issue. So why is Israel's attack specifically on that area of Bushehr important? Why attack that area of South Pars? As we saw at the beginning with the comment made by Iran, on this issue, that's how we have it. I've already closed the video, but the comment we mentioned at the beginning where Iran was saying, well, listen, the attack is going to happen in retaliation. I mean, if necessary, the Minister of Foreign Affairs... Look, here's the video we were watching. Do you remember? The Minister of Foreign Affairs was saying, well, this is the spokesperson, not the minister, but the spokesperson. This person was speaking because the minister is Abbas Araghchi. He is Ismail Baghil, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was basically saying, well, they are going to retaliate in kind. So if nuclear facilities are attacked, they will focus on nuclear facilities, or if oil facilities are attacked. I mean, well, supposedly they will respond that way. That's the message he would have given. That's why it's important. The nervousness about oil and gas and all of this is interesting because if they're already attacking that area, obviously what you expect is a reaction in that sense. No, that's the issue, not there. And well, let's move on to other important points as well.
But Marco Rubio was scolding Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, for making a defense agreement without getting permission from the United States. They're upset. They're upset. We live in a world where the superpowers aren't so strong and the weak aren't so weak. This confuses everyone, especially the major powers. Donald Trump sees the Ukrainian actions and says they should have surrendered already so I could negotiate with Putin. Why is this a problem?
It is. This Bill Browder, a financier and, well, an activist, the comment isn't very interesting. We live in a world where the powers are no longer so powerful and the weak countries are no longer so weak. So, he understood this perfectly, and that refers not necessarily to Iran but to Ukraine, but it applies to many wars. It applies to Pakistan, Afghanistan. It applies to Ukraine, Russia. It also applies to what you mentioned. Well, in the case of the United States, well, Israel too, militarily speaking, technologically speaking, but over a month has already passed. And, well, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, within the battle itself, the United States has definitely been far superior in its attacks. But when it comes to strategy, that's where things are different. Why? Well, because Iran is under pressure not to open the Strait of Hormuz, and look at what Iran says about it. Let's get into the details, because Iran bluntly warns the Strait of Hormuz will never be the same. It's a direct threat regarding what's happening in the war in the Middle East. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard stated that they are already preparing what they call a new order in the Persian Gulf, which suggests changes in maritime and commercial control of the area. This comes after Donald Trump issued the ultimatum that if Iran reopens the strait, the United States will attack Iranian energy infrastructure. Donald Trump even stated that Iran could be left without power plants or bridges. He also said that yesterday. They discussed an agreement, but also mentioned destroying power plants and another bridge. Maritime traffic in the area has dropped by 90% since the beginning of the conflict, which is already affecting the price of oil, even causing shortages. Iran, especially in Asia, announced that it will impose fees on ships passing through the strait and charge in its own currency, the rial, and prohibit the passage of all ships serving the interests of the United States or Israel. Meanwhile, the United States carried out military operations inside Iran to rescue this pilot, and we've already seen more or less how all of this happened, and they announced that they will hold a conference today on the subject. So I think there will surely be a comment about it later. I think it was 1 o'clock Washington time when this announcement is going to be made. Let's see what time it is over there. Maybe it'll happen right now. Washington, D.C. time is 1:25. Maybe right now, if the conference is already ending or something like that, we'll talk about it at the end of the live stream. Let's see what happened over there. Greetings, Roble. How have you been, Eliseo? Eugenio, what do you all think about this situation? Alright, let's move on to several topics because the United Arab Emirates is already signaling that it is willing to enter the conflict, or it's already accepting that it will have to get involved in the conflict or whatever is decided. I mean, if it's a matter of dialogue, then dialogue. If it's a matter of conflict, then conflict. But the United Arab Emirates says it is ready to take whatever actions or measures are necessary to open the Strait of Hormuz. That's the main point. Let's discuss the details. Because, well, this is really interesting. And, well, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, okay? For the new members of the community, since we don't know you yet, well, just leave a comment about where you're from. I know I already recognize some of you, right? Whether you're in Spain or Cuba or Mexico or the United States, right? All right, then on to the next topic. The United Arab Emirates announced that they will join any initiative that the United States presents with the idea of opening the Strait of Hormuz, meaning by force or under some kind of strategy. This statement would be a shift for Abu Dhabi, for the United Arab Emirates, moving from being a mediator to a possible military actor in the region. It's not that they're going to take action yet, but they're already on board. They've already said yes to joining, right? Presidential advisor Anwar Gargash reportedly warned that Iran's strategy will lead to a greater military presence from the United States and Israel in the Middle East. Donald Trump issued a direct ultimatum to Iran. There must be an agreement or the strait reopens by Tuesday or there will be military consequences. What the United Arab Emirates is saying is that they would be willing, in an alliance with other Gulf countries, which means there are other countries they've spoken to, I suppose, to take all necessary measures to reopen the maritime passage. What are they doing? Well, this, along with what was also brought to the UN Security Council, to ask them to allow them to operate, to allow them to forcibly open the Strait of Hormuz. There's another message as well from Ismail Bagheshi, the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry. Let's listen to what he has to say.
If I am considered a representative of a civilized and cultured nation, the first thing we are taught as children is to be polite. If you expect me to even utter those words, I certainly apologize. As I already mentioned, even Iranians in the Stone Age spoke with politeness and courtesy. This kind of language is not a sign of greatness or self-confidence. It should be analyzed by psychologists to understand the reason behind the use of such language. Regarding the topic of the time of death and these discussions that have been repeated many times, a respectable person wrote that, referring to the fact that they gave Iran a 48-hour deadline, they said, this kind of language has actually been used constantly for 48 years to try to intimidate Iranians. Look, Iranians, when defending their country, do not have to let themselves be intimidated by such ultimatums and threats. Such ultimatums simply reflect the criminal intent and purpose of those who make them. In our response and defense of our country, we will not allow even the slightest compromise. They have shown how our armed forces will act in the face of any aggression. And it is the responsibility of the international community, of the countries in the region, and of all United Nations members to face this process. They must resist the normalization of crime and the violation of the law. Now let's really remember Iran. Iran not only defends the integrity of Iran, Iran is defending the order based on international law. Therefore, it is the duty of all countries to be vigilant here. They must know that the normalization of crime and the normalization of the violation of the law will certainly not be limited to the borders of the affected countries.
Well, he talks about international law while bombing countries that haven't fired at him, right? And you say, well, he's shooting at the bases. Well, if that were the case, maybe there would be some justification. The thing is, that's not the case. He targets infrastructure, shoots at civilians, shoots at hotels, and so on, right? But he's talking about the dialogues, about the way Donald Trump expresses himself. Well, we know what Trump is like. And we know that he does have a way of expressing himself that's sometimes very unusual, to put it that way. All right, let's listen.
They killed 45,000 people last month. More than that, it could be up to 60,000. They kill protesters. They're animals, and we have to stop them, and we can't allow them to have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. Do they want a nuclear weapon? They've been trying for a long time. I stopped them with Obama's horrible Iran nuclear deal. I stopped them in many different ways. We eliminated Soleimani, the evil genius. He was a genius. Evil. We got rid of him, and then we stopped them with the B-2 bombers not long ago. And if we hadn't done it, Israel and the Middle East would have already been wiped out by now.
Well, those are harsh words from Donald Trump, because you can certainly speak very nicely, but you're literally eliminating your own people, aren't you? And that's documented by the Iranians themselves. It's not something Trump just made up, but rather the Iranians themselves have shown it with images over and over again. Now, he also talks about how it seems that after some time, Trump is starting to understand that this is an important point, or it's a point he touched on at the beginning and then didn't really come back to, which is the part about how Iran has operated within that government. I imagine that now he's letting himself be advised by his communications advisors, because he usually focuses a lot on the oil issue. That's a topic he loves. He did it with Venezuela. Since this war isn't popular, I imagine he's trying to gain some, right? I mean, to gain popularity within the United States itself. There's also another issue that stands out, which is precisely the topic of oil, because I'm coming back to that, right? Let's listen.
Consider what I would do if I could choose. Take the oil because it's there to be taken. There's nothing else.
Damn. He gives you this nice opening and you say, well, okay, fine, you're criticizing how harsh and repressive the Iranian government is. You stop saying you want to keep the oil 5 seconds later. Well, yeah, I do want the oil. He can't help it. Obviously, that's always been his style, and well, clearly they're not going to change it, right? That's his style, and that's how he's going to keep talking, right? Another thing that also draws attention in this matter is the elimination of the Iranian intelligence chief, right? We saw this at the start. Let's discuss what happened and how it unfolded. A few moments ago, I mentioned that the elimination of has been confirmed. A person named Majid Kademi is a chief of intelligence of the Revolutionary Guard who was reportedly eliminated in an attack by Israel, apparently, right? According to what the IDF itself says. But let's go into the details of how this operation took place, and then we'll also look at some very interesting images of what's happening in the world. But what is known is that apparently it happened during some explosions, right? That there were targets that were hit in Iran. I mean, these are obviously images of one of the many bombings, but yes, the intelligence chief. He lost his life in an operation that was carried out by the Israeli Air Force, so it is confirmed that it was indeed due to bombings. With precise information from their intelligence department, it shows that they have been able to penetrate Iranian intelligence. Kademi was a key figure in the Iranian security apparatus and responsible for the regime's strategic intelligence operations. According to Israel, he was involved in planning attacks against Israel, American targets, and Jewish communities in different countries. He is also linked to internal repression in Iran, including surveillance and control of citizen protests. The death of this individual would be a direct blow to the command and control system of the Revolutionary Guard, one of the most powerful structures of the Iranian regime. But he was not the only one. Israel also killed Mohammad Reza Azubi Farid Kahi, the financial officer of the Revolutionary Guard's oil headquarters. We did manage to mention him yesterday. Yes, I mean, we also managed to mention him yesterday because, well, there's been a lot of talk about this operator. Maybe he's more important than intelligence right now because he's the one who manages a good part of the money. I mean, it's also important how to eliminate those individuals, but the operations seem to continue as usual, right? What does this strategy of his mean? Iran has what they call bait, which is a strategy of having a government or a mirror structure of the entire government, basically in which, so if one dies, there's another one in front, so to speak, with the same level of power who can operate, even if the other one hasn't fallen yet, but is making mistakes. This one can operate above the other. He doesn't realize that there's a power in the shadows, so to speak, with the same level of power. And even while operating, if they make a mistake or if they betray, so to speak, the operation, the other one can step in and take over from him. I mean, it's really strange, honestly, how this happens, but it has worked for them. At least in times of crisis, it has worked. Imagine also a huge burden of bureaucracy, of slowness, you name it. I mean, it's a terrible burden for a government, but on the other hand, in a crisis or in a conflict, it allows them to stay active. It allows them to have more or less a certain organization. And I imagine that's the intention, right? I mean, it's designed precisely for that, isn't it? So, well, that's how it is with this matter. Let's look at several of the reactions that have been happening among these leaders. There are actions from different parts of the world, what's been happening, and we'll go to other reports. Another message against Iran is given right in the middle of Passover and all of this. Look, listen.
Normally, when you're in a very hostile territory, and I don't think there's a place much more hostile than Iran, they are capable fighters, they're very tough people, and there are others like that too. You don't care when the enemy is weak, but that enemy is strong. Not as strong as they were about a month ago, I can assure you of that. In fact, right now they're not that strong at all in my opinion, but we're going to find out soon. But when something like that happens, when a pilot is shut down, in most cases you really can't go in because you'd be going in with 200 people and a lot of jets and helicopters, and you really don't have a chance. They shoot them down, you lose 200 to rescue one. It's a horrible thing, but it's very rare that you can do it. And what we did yesterday was that we didn't rescue one, we rescued two. We kept the first one a secret, and we were able to keep it a secret for about a day, which made it much better. But those two pilots were incredibly brave, and we thank them. And we're going to have a press conference today at 1 o'clock in the Oval Office, and we're looking forward to it. But I just want to say that we have a great army. We are the best army, the most powerful army anywhere in the world. Did you see what happened with Venezuela?
You saw what happened with Venezuela, says Trump, right? Well, that's also part of what the office is eagerly waiting for. But it happens with this because the rabbit is there and everything. That we have a great army, the most powerful army in the world. Important. other matters, other images that have been carried out by different leaders. We are going to look at some of these reactions. This time, it's a reaction from Russians who are angry about the internet issue. What's going on with that issue? Let's listen to some of these reactions. We're going to play some videos. They're obviously already dubbed in Spanish, since understanding Russian is a bit complicated.
Damn, what's going on with the freaking internet? I don't even care anymore. I honestly don't give a damn about anything that's happening. Damn, in this freaking country, I'm shaking, damn it, because I can't do anything, damn. All I can do is lie here watching TikTok, which even freezes, damn. They leave me comments, I get a notification, I go into this freaking app, damn it, with the VPN always on, and honestly, damn, no damn it, just damn, no comments, no likes, nothing. I can't, damn it, see the activity, I can't do anything, damn it, just nothing. Music, I don't even listen to music anymore, damn it, that's it, damn it, I just don't listen to music. Every few days, sometimes my mood gets a little better, I listen to my 3 favorite songs on SoundCloud, that's it, damn it, I don't listen to any more music.
What? The Russians get intense, don't they? Well, I mean, I totally get them, you know? Or imagine, I mean, it's just that, well, it's become, I mean, the internet beyond the communication it allows us to have. And all that, well, it's become a source of income for millions of people, right? A lot of people, I mean, some have their online sales, some give courses, and many jobs depend on the internet. And if suddenly they start taking away those tools, well, obviously, yes. Well, people are very angry, very upset, and well, let's move on to some other reactions, right? Let's listen to this. It's a VPN check because of the internet issue over there in Russia. Listen and watch this.
Hello, I'm listening. Kind. Pavel Skyping. The document, if yours allows it, a driver especially for you.
I kindly ask you to help me. If you would be so kind, please.
Check for prohibited content and use a VPN.
About prohibited content and VPN.
On the phone keypad, select the star, the #6, and we'll check my phone. What? For my phone.
Again.
Star grid.
6 bars in cell.
What for? To match the phone with the databases. Okay, here.
Inspect? What nonsense are you talking about? No?
Nonsense.
All of this is being written down. The police officers are asking me to check something on my phone. What exactly is being checked?
Look, if your mobile device gets lost or stolen, you go to the branch, write a statement, and in the statement you indicate the first IMEI number. As a result, it is added to the database, and when the check is performed, there is only one church in operation.
Well, now it turns out to be a rather questionable concern.
Could you explain to me exactly how Bessel's platform works?
I'm not obligated to, let's be honest, I'm not obligated to give you a phone number. You can look at it, I can unlock it, look at it, and actually...
I have to do it. Don't get smart, understood? Actually, I have to do it. Don't try to be smart, understood?
Are you free?
Yes, totally.
Good, yes.
Well, that's a complaint made by this guy where they're asking him about the VPN, its prohibited content, and you know, things like that, right? But even when they stop you in a car, you say, yeah, it's intense, the situation is bad, let's move on to other matters, other important topics. Check this out. There's also a report about a location found in Lebanon, where supposedly there was a school that was being used by Hezbollah to store weapons, according to what this report says. Now, we have to remember that a good part of the south has been evacuated. This is precisely because of the conflict taking place in that region of Lebanon against Hezbollah, a group that has been attacking Israel for some time now, since the war in Gaza began. And well, it's an issue that now, with the situation involving Iran, has come back. We have to remember that Hezbollah is sponsored by Iran, specifically within the Revolutionary Guard itself. They operate and they even have people inside Lebanon itself. Or they have people from the Revolutionary Guard inside Hezbollah, inside Lebanon. So, according to what the Israeli army is reporting right now, they have said that a school was found in southern Lebanon that is being used as a Hezbollah weapons depot. They have also found Christian churches, Catholic churches, that are now abandoned and being used as bases, as shelters. Among the documents found, there was evidence of the Radwan unit, an elite Hezbollah force specialized in special operations. Israel claims that the weapons found came from Iran and were destined for Shiite strongholds in southern Lebanon. In addition to the material inside the school, the Israeli army found another hidden cache with more weapons in the vicinity. Israel constantly accuses Hezbollah of using civilian infrastructure such as schools, houses, and even churches of other religions to operate. On this occasion, it would be something similar. These soldiers from the Golani Brigade found reports, combat manuals, and rockets. The classic uniforms, etc., of Hezbollah inside this region, in this area, in the deep south, which borders Israel, which is this area. This discovery, on the other hand, raises concerns that it might be used to justify attacks on schools. Obviously, that should not happen. And it wasn't attacked, it wasn't blown up, it didn't explode. Instead, the soldiers themselves went in and discovered this, and well, that's what they've been reporting. But what is being asked is that no matter what, schools should not be attacked, especially not with bombings, because obviously mistakes can happen. Yes, they've already shared some images of these rockets that have been found, rockets, helmets. These reports from the Revolutionary Guard itself, from Hezbollah, about how RPGs are used. There's the manual on how to use them. Let's say, well, some of these documents, all of them already all dirty, well, and the Israeli army in the area operating and finding these kinds of stockpiles. There were no people, apparently there was no exchange of gunfire or anything, but obviously it's a concerning issue. By the way, on other matters, changing the subject, flight ticket prices are skyrocketing. Flights, this is happening in the United States. They say that checked baggage fees have already started to go up due to the increase in fuel prices. The rise in oil prices started after the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the key oil routes, as you know. United Airlines, JetBlue, among others, are charging an extra $10 per bag. United now charges around $45 for the first bag, just like that, $45. I mean, that's outrageous. It says if you pay before the flight and up to $50 if you pay within the 24 hours before. According to what's reported, the second bag can cost between $55 and $60, and the third one went up to $200 for the third bag. JetBlue also increased its fees. The first bag, well, I already said it, the airlines are simply raising the cost of flying. That's also another important issue, and it affects the population. At least those who want to travel, right? Let's move on to other important matters. Let's go.
Well, I guess it's worth pointing out that the situation has changed. Well,
I think the audio just cut out there.
it seems that these drones are being manufactured jointly. Ukraine, Germany, Ukraine, France. Turns out these are upgraded drones. They fly farther than the previous ones, and of course it turns out they're doing everything possible to completely cut off our logistics at the border. At the same time, we are also already adjusting what we're doing in response to each of their new maneuvers. Now, as they say, it's our own work. The guys shoot down a huge number of drones every day. We were just counting. In total, it's around 3,500. It turns out that only our fighters destroyed that many birds. electronic warfare drones in the last 2.5 months, saying the enemy has run out of drones would probably be a lie. That's why we'll say that the enemy is still being supplied. As we can see, they're still being provided with enough power. European states are trying to test all their new technologies through Ukrainian forces in our current war. We will do everything possible to destroy the enemy and make them understand that no matter how much they try to invent something new or bring it to the front, that will not make us abandon our goals and tasks.
This is a reaction from a Chechen commander, a Russian commander, but on the Chechen side, who is, well, reacting to this matter. The commander of the Russian Special Forces, Ahmad Abdi, is the one generating this reaction about the Ukrainian drones, since they have also been attacking these points. Well, it's an interesting part of what's happening, isn't it? Also, here's another reaction. Look.
The drug, no.
No. Well, this is one of the videos that have been circulating since yesterday. This was in Kuwait, right? From what we've been observing. Also, more images are coming in, along with reports of explosions in that area. Also, well, several floods, right? During the last few days, 2 or 3 days, there have been several major floods. This time, Indonesia, for example, and also in Russia, we've already shown several floods. It's such an astonishing amount of water that even in Indonesia, where they're used to getting heavy rains, the ground hasn't been able to absorb so much water. This is striking. This is in the Sibaba district, Cianjur, on the island of Java in Indonesia. They say that in some places the water reached up to an adult's waist, and in some areas they simply had to evacuate. Also, among the images of these floods, there was a bigger flood, this one in Dagestan. Well, we've already seen some images from yesterday. For example, we showed some images of Dagestan and these floods in Russia. That has also, well, been surprising. Among what has happened in Russia, what has happened in certain areas of Siberia as well, which have been hit hard. What was happening in the area has obviously caused problems as well. How have you been? How are you doing? There are still some important notes left for today. We will also be looking at how the oil situation is going. Obviously, that's another issue that hasn't stopped. It keeps going up. So we'll also be talking a bit about that, about the market reactions today and how oil opened in the Americas. I don't know how it's going to be because we're about to get an idea of how it's going to close. Surely in a little while we'll have a better sense. There's supposedly an important meeting and an important announcement from the United States. We'll see if we can catch it in a little while, but well, almost every Monday since the war started, important announcements are made around noon. Sometimes they delay it a bit. We'll check the details soon. How are you, Marcela Patriliceo? Good day to everyone joining, Francisco Arce. How have you been? Well, to the whole community, wishing you great health. Let's move on to other important points. Look. That's it. Today, there's at least an interesting reaction to what's happening with Nancy Guthrie. Let's get into the details. Do you remember the case of Nancy Guthrie? No, she disappeared on January 31st, 2026. And look at the date we're at now. We're already in April. The daughter of a famous host over there on US Today in the United States apparently disappeared, supposedly taken as a hostage, although even that isn't clear. There is the suspected individual, supposedly the one who might have done it. She was apparently taken by force, with some violence according to reports. An elderly lady, a woman who was already in delicate health, 84 years old, right? And right now, a multi-million-dollar reward is being offered to find her. The woman disappeared on February 1st, or rather, February 1st is when she officially went missing, under extremely unusual circumstances, or was it January 31st? The thing is, she disappeared between January 31st and February 1st in Tucson, Arizona. This happened under extremely suspicious circumstances. There at the scene, traces of blood were found, back doors were open, and the doorbell security camera had been removed. The FBI and Google managed to recover footage showing a masked man in front of the house, but he has not yet been identified. The total reward exceeds $1.2 million, a historic figure for a disappearance case in the region. A businessman linked to Crime Stoppers has also contributed another $100,000 to encourage anonymous tips. The strategy aims for informants not to contact the sheriff. They're asking them to do that. Just imagine, instead of contacting them directly, to contact Crime Stoppers to maintain anonymity so they don't contact the authorities directly, so that information stays 100% anonymous. This point has obviously generated controversy since it implies a lack of trust in the police investigation. Experts and media figures have criticized the sheriff's office for alleged mistakes and for not properly securing the crime scene. The family insists that any tip, even an anonymous one, could be key to solving the case. The media and social pressure is increasing more and more. They've gone 3 months without any significant progress, without even a sign that she is okay. That is obviously terrible as well. The authorities believe that as time passes, well, it could be someone close. The person responsible could be... It could be a stranger, but it could also be a family member. A person who took her, someone who knows. Someone, maybe a friend, maybe an acquaintance who found out, who suspects that this person could be the one. Well, maybe the culprit is among them, right? So some important information could be revealed that way. I don't know if it's because of the reward, but maybe because of the anonymity, the possibility that you don't have to contact the authorities directly. Maybe that will encourage some people to speak up in that sense, right? Who knows, right? But the thing is, that's the issue. That's what's happening. Now everyone is going to focus on that. Basically, it's anonymous information just to see if something comes up, because at this point, man, it's really complicated. It's not impossible. Decades-old cases have been solved, so it can be done. The real challenge is solving it and finding them alive, right? That would be the ideal outcome, right? Obviously, it's complicated, difficult, clearly. Well, among the footage we still have from Dagestan, Russia, as we saw, you can see this really curious movement. It's something else to see something like that in Russia. This, well, is a tremendous landslide, an impressive amount of mud that caused problems in that region of the world. It's been complicated, these floods and overflows where, well, between the rains, but especially the very rapid melting, it's causing problems almost every year. By now, it's becoming normal. Floods in different parts of Russia, because suddenly the process that used to take months for the snow and ice to melt is happening now. And some of that water gets absorbed by nature itself, but when it melts too quickly. The ground can't absorb that much water, so you start getting floods, overflows, and on top of that, there have been rains too, right? So there have been huge floods as well in all these images. Well, more details keep coming out about how the strike happened at Hasenoborovskoye, where this ship was a ship attacked by Ukrainian drones inside Russia, but in the Black Sea. That's also important, right? So let's move on to other interesting topics. There was apparently an attack, or some say it was an accident. We'll have to see where this individual died. He's an important figure, a commander of the Russian Air Force named Alexander Otroshenko. He reportedly lost his life in what they say was an air incident in Crimea. He's a high-ranking commander of the Air Force, so I would assume he would have the best pilots and the best planes, right? But anyway, according to what the Russian Air Force acknowledges, he reportedly lost his life in a plane accident. They're reporting this now, but the incident happened last week. It's only being acknowledged now. There, in the incident, 30 people lost their lives, according to what a high-ranking Russian communications official reported today, Monday. Alexander Komachenko, commander of the 45th Army of the Air Force and Air Defense of the Northern Fleet, lost his life last week, according to the same statement. Well, that's how things stand. The one who revealed it first was Andrei Chivis, who is the governor of the region, and from there the Russian media picked up the report and have been commenting on it, right? Hey, since we're at this point, we still have some news left. Please help us by sharing, help us by leaving a like. That really helps the channel a lot. And if you want to go a little further and help us with a super chat or a membership, that's obviously appreciated as well. Let's move on to other matters.
I've spoken with Mr. Trump about 3 times, but if you tell him he's wrong, he gets upset. You tell him, what you're saying is wrong. Let me explain it to you. He gets annoyed right away. You shouldn't say that. It's better to say, you're right. If he gets upset, it could be a problem.
That's a reaction from the former Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba. Do you remember? Well, at least 3 times Donald Trump and Ishiba met, and, well, you saw what happened. He doesn't like being told he's wrong or that he made a mistake about something, even if it's something trivial. I mean, Donald Trump caused a problem. It's a serious problem because that weakens you as a leader. I mean, if no one can criticize you, if no one can say anything to you for whatever reason, then obviously that leaves you in a weak position. That's why it's something that Trump has been criticized for a lot, that Putin has been criticized for, and that other world leaders have been criticized for as well. No les permite. Noticing their own mistakes actually works against them, doesn't it? Donald Trump also claims that the war may be about to end. He says the following.
What prevents you from ending the war with Iran? Well, the war could end very quickly if they do what they have to do. They have to do certain things. They know it. They have been negotiating, I believe, in good faith. We have had a total regime change. You know, the people who are there now are much more reasonable than the lunatics who were there before, right? In phase 1 and phase 2, they were lunatics. Donors, the people we are negotiating with now on behalf of Iran, are much more reasonable. You can call it whatever you want, but I call it a regime change. And I think most people give us credit for that. The first regime was eliminated. The second regime was eliminated. Now, the third group of people we're dealing with is not so radicalized, and we believe they're actually much smarter.
I don't know. I don't think so, but well, I mean, in the end, he says they're more chill, that they're calmer. Well, they're the same. There aren't any changes. I mean, in any case, some leaders fell. They're the same. In fact, I walked from Moctava, and if he's the new supreme leader, it's known that he's much tougher than Ali Khamenei. So what Trump is saying, he wants to sell it to the American public, not to his followers. Like saying, look, I already... Vamos cambiar el régimen. Wink, wink, right? And that's it. The matter is over and done. I mean, no, obviously. He's selling something it's not, honestly. So that's why he says the war will end soon. And well, the thing is, he throws out bait. He throws out the bait and maybe it works, right? But at this point, no, she doesn't want to. She doesn't take the bait. She's not interested. That's what she's shown with her actions and words, right? Today, at least there are actions that are going down. Well, that's something else, but it doesn't happen. I mean, one day and then another, things just keep getting more intense. And well, this topic doesn't catch on. And now, even if there were dialogues saying, well, look, here the Revolutionary Guard is coming out to admit that there is a dialogue or that this is going to happen. The only one really has been the one who, even though we know he doesn't have much power, has given the signal, like there could be negotiations, but in that sense, they're the only ones. But other than that, it doesn't seem like the war is going to end soon. Honestly, no. Let's move on to other important points and review several pending issues. Russia reportedly launched a massive drone attack against southern Ukraine, At least 3 people have died and several are injured, according to the governor of the Odessa region. The team confirmed on its own social media that among the 3 victims was at least one 30-year-old woman. It is also known that the 30-year-old woman's 2-year-old daughter was among them, and there was another woman, 53 years old, who also lost her life in the attack. The buildings were left very damaged, right? That's one of the images that have been circulating today. They are civilian buildings that continue to be attacked in this conflict. And unfortunately, that's been Russia's very regrettable pressure tactic in that regard. And well, it keeps happening, right? That's a huge problem. Now, another issue to pay attention to is that the Orion spacecraft may have already, or is about to, enter what is known as the far side of the moon. According to reports, it has already entered the lunar sphere of influence and is approaching the far side, where it will lose communication for about 50 minutes. The Artemis II crew entered the moon's gravitational sphere of influence yesterday, Sunday, according to reports. We have recently received confirmation that the spacecraft, the Orion spacecraft and its crew, have officially entered the lunar sphere of influence. This milestone occurs at 4 days, 6 hours, 2 minutes and 54 seconds into Artemis. After reaching this point after leaving Earth, mission specialist Christina Koch stated, "I would like to share that we noticed we entered the lunar sphere of influence about an hour ago. And indeed, we are now falling toward the moon instead of moving away from Earth. It's an amazing milestone." She also says, "Before we saw the Earth as a crescent through the side hatch and the moon through the window. And without a doubt, the moon now looks much bigger than the Earth." And well, they showed this image, right? That's, well, part of what is being observed and what the flyby, let's say, is about over this place, right? NASA's Artemis mission, which was launched last Wednesday, will be a 10-day mission. Go around the moon, return, and, well, land, and with that, confirm that this Orion spacecraft is working perfectly for another mission that will begin lunar landings as a first step toward establishing a lunar base. Or is this already part of a longer-term project to build a lunar base, which involves many issues, right? There's the possibility of mining, of using it as a base to go to Mars and so on, right? There's already even one under construction, a nuclear power plant, a micronuclear power plant, a plant that will be installed there to provide electricity, so to speak, almost infinite, where you don't need a very large nuclear plant, just a small reactor. Let's say, now I don't remember if Boeing won it, one of these companies won it, and well, they're the ones creating it. I don't remember if it's Boeing or if there were tech companies participating. There was Nokia, there was Boeing, there were several others, and well, I don't remember who won the project. Everyone presented their project and the winner is the one that's working on it right now. By the way, let's move on to other important matters as well. Well, some very curious information is also being revealed about what's happening with Nicolas Maduro himself, according to what the American rapper reports. Tekashi 69, right? 6ix9ine, right? It would be 6ix9ine, right? And he made headlines again after describing what it was like living with Nicolas Maduro at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. His statements became known after regaining his freedom following a 90-day sentence. According to available information, Maduro was, well, on January 3rd, right? He was captured, so he had to live with him. After regaining his freedom, Tekashi participated in a live broadcast in which, well, he claimed, right? It's this rapper right there. He claimed the one in the center, right? I think it's him. He looked really bad, didn't he? He even smelled bad. According to the report, the rapper said that the arrangement of the spaces inside the prison was really terrible. He says, literally, I swear, he says, at the end of my bed, it's Neon, and at the head of my bed, it's Maduro. He says, I mean, it's really close together. When asked if he shared a room, he answered yes. He says he took my bed last year and I took Didi's bed, referring to the rapper, right? Like Didi, right? In other words, he reported that if I took Didi's bed and Maduro slept right in front of me, confirming how close they were when he was detained. He says, one of the points that drew the most attention is the description of the conditions in which Maduro arrived at the detention center. He says he didn't smell good. Well, he smelled like when he came out of the box, like the anti-terrorist unit, right? He says, but then, he was able to take the time to shower. I mean, when he arrived, he smelled really bad. But after that, well, he was able to shower, right? It's, well, part of the things, the details that I've been sharing in this podcast, in that interview. This person was sentenced to 90 days after admitting to violating the terms of parole. This happened after pleading guilty in 2025 to drug possession, specifically cocaine and ecstasy, found in his home in Miami, right? That's why he was arrested at the time. Another issue that also draws attention is that Iran claims it will not negotiate with the United States. They just reaffirmed it. Today, Iran says they will not negotiate under any circumstances. Anesis says negotiation is not at all compatible with ultimatums, crimes, or threats. If given an ultimatum, they won't negotiate. He says our demands are the end of the imposed war, along with guarantees. He says this disastrous cycle will not be repeated. The Iranians themselves are saying it, right? It's also part of the message. On the other hand, it is also reported that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard announced that the Strait of Hormuz will never be the same as it was, especially for the United States and for Israel. This, well, is being reported today by the EFE agency. As part of these reactions that are happening right now, right? There's also another matter that draws attention. Another Artemis II record is already being reported at this moment. It says this is now the longest space journey, surpassing Apollo 13 at this moment. NASA's Artemis II mission has officially broken the record for the longest space journey in human history by surpassing the distance of Apollo 13. Just imagine that. Well, that's important too, right? I mean, obviously, that was also, well, important. That's already several records, right? This is the second record they've set, or third. They've broken several records. Another thing that also stands out before we move on to the comments. South Korean intelligence is claiming that the North Koreans are already preparing Kim Jong-un's daughter as the next leader. The National Intelligence Service of South Korea stated that Kim's daughter is now officially the heir to the dictator's power. So, if there were any doubts, at least according to South Korean intelligence, they say that yes, she will indeed be the next leader. The intelligence agency confirms this, citing information and statements made before lawmakers today, Monday, that this public display of the girl, of little Yawai, 13 years old, led to this. It was a public act. He probably says they aim to dispel any doubts. It's undeniable she will be the next leader. Just imagine how early they start preparing them. He says that's undeniable. According to reports, when asked about possible protests by Kim Jong-un's sister, who has long been considered the second most important figure, they say she doesn't have substantial powers, according to what the National Intelligence Service states, or she doesn't have independent powers. She's only powerful because she's his sister, but that's it. I mean, no. They haven't given her special powers or anything that could be interpreted as her being able to replace him. They simply say that's not the case. No, it's not like that. Well, that's interesting too, isn't it? Let's move on to the comments. We're checking this supposed message from Washington, right? To see if the message has already been sent and what happened there. And in the meantime, let's go to the comments. How are you, Patri? Rosalina, how have you been? He says, no, the war isn't over. Well, it seems not, it seems not. Meanwhile, well, the clearest sign of this would be if oil started to go down. I mean, if suddenly oil started to drop, that would be a very good sign that things are calming down. But right now, it's staying at $110. Look, for me, it's good news that it's not at 120 or 130 like it was this weekend, it seemed. Everything indicates it was going to be more. Up rather than down, it stays at that level, almost the same as on Friday. And so far, I think it's positive that it hasn't shot up, but I think the containment strategy worked on the part of the world in general, trying to send a good signal. For example, the issue with OPEC. That seemed key to me, or for OPEC to say we're going to produce more oil. That makes the price go down. And then for countries like Japan to say we have a lot of reserves, right? And I think Taiwan also mentioned that they had more reserves than they appeared to have. Well, the point is that those are the positive signals that helped keep the price from skyrocketing. The negative ones are that there are no negotiations, that there was an attack on the Bushehr gas facility, the one in South Pars in Iran. That was attacked by Israel, and the Iranians also launched intense attacks toward Bahrain and Kuwait. So these are also signs that show the conflict is far from over. In fact, it seems likely to spread. That's another issue that raises doubts about whether this will be resolved. He says, how have you been, Patti and Marcella? What's up? He says here, where are they? Where are they? Kim Jong-un's daughter is really young. She's really young. She's 13, but they're already preparing her. I can't imagine how they prepare someone like that. I mean, that must be really intense. He says, let's see, I think the announcement about what was going to happen in Washington is already out. We'll review that detail soon, right? But it looks like the announcement is already out. Let's see. There it is. Let's get into the details of what's happening in Washington. Breaking news, there's a message from the White House in Washington. Let's listen to what it says and we'll act on that. No.
At the President's direction, we deployed both human assets and exquisite technologies that no other intelligence service in the world possesses to a daunting challenge.
Well, basically what they're doing, the notice wasn't this one. The director of the CIA, the one who appears there, John Ratcliffe, talks about the rescue of the missing aviator following the president's instructions. He says, we deployed both human and sophisticated technological resources that no other intelligence service in the world possesses to face the formidable challenge, comparable to searching for a single grain of sand in the middle of the desert. He says, well, that's a message that was surely written by Trump himself, right? But anyway, that's the message, right? Of course, I mean, with so many things that have happened, you latch onto the news that was most relevant and not negative. In this case, this positive one is about everything that's happening to recover an American soldier. Well, for Trump, it's obviously good news, so it seemed like it was going to be something new, at least in this first message I see. But no, there are more messages. Let me see what else was said. Anyway, he began with that. Here we have a little more about what he has been reacting to, because Trump obviously also spoke, right? Let's listen to this other part of the message.
That to it, but we have to find that leaker, because that's a sick person. Probably didn't realize the extent of how bad it was. I can't imagine that the person did, but we're to find out its national security. And the person that did the story will go to jail if he doesn't say, and that doesn't.
Well, let's see. It says the following. It says President Donald Trump announced that he has threatened to jail a journalist over a leak related to a high-risk military mission to rescue the downed pilot. So, the journalist shared more information than they should have, which could have put the pilot at risk, at least according to what Donald Trump says, right? And they're going to investigate that. There could even be jail time, according to the report. There's also another statement from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. Let's listen to the following.
finally able to activate his emergency transponder. His first message was simple and it was powerful. He sent a message: God is good. In that moment of isolation and danger, his faith and fighting spirit shone through. You see, shot down on a Friday, Good Friday, hidden in a cave, a crevice, all of Saturday, and rescued.
The first message that the pilot gave said God is good. The message that the American aviator who was shot down in Iran sent from his emergency transponder after his plane was shot down on Friday by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth added that no American life was lost in the rescue mission. Ask any Iranian soldier who has dared to approach that pilot before or during the mission, says Hegseth. It says death from heaven, said Pete Hegseth. That message, well, part of these reactions that have been happening for a few minutes from Washington also says the following. Donald Trump, let's listen.
Talk about, oh, freedom for Iran. They don't tell you the real facts. Women, men, gays. How about gays for Iran? They kill the gays. They throw them off buildings. So I wonder what's going on. I can only say this.
President Trump is claiming that Iranians are urging for continued U.S. attacks against Iran. In other words, well, the people of Iran are asking for the regime to be ended once and for all. Even if this puts their lives at risk, since they are facing a much greater danger. He also criticized the call for freedom for Iran made by progressives. He says, well, what they're saying is, why don't they ask for freedom for women, for the LGBT community, for the gay community in Iran, since they don't have freedom? And look, it may sound like a joke or whatever, but that's the reality. I mean, what Iranians are living through is terrifying. Now, whether this justifies a war, well, obviously that's something that could be debated, but what has been seen, and there has been a huge number of images coming in from protests that have been happening long before this became a war. It's clear that there have been a lot of Iranians who have been asking for freedom in their country for quite some time. That's also another point that Trump brings up. Also, well, within this, and I think this is where the topic gets more interesting, is what General King says, because in the end, they are the ones. The generals aren't really the ones seeing how things are in reality. Let's first listen to what he says, and then we'll go to the full commentary. We're not going to listen.
Survive and return. They always knew that we would be ordered to go get them, and they always knew that we would be coming to get them. These two operations reflect our nation's most sacred obligation to our military service members. We leave no one behind. Bless you.
We leave no one behind. Someone sneezed and he said, God bless you. Gesundheit. That's not what they say in the United States when someone sneezes, but it makes me laugh because it's in him. The general is very serious, but when someone sneezes, he says, God bless you, and continues as before. All right, but he says these two operations reflect our nation's most sacred obligation to our service members. We leave no one behind, says General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, about the search and rescue mission for a downed American pilot in Iran. Kane stated that the operation serves as a clear reminder of the capability and willingness of U.S. joint forces. He added that the United States will recover its soldiers from anywhere in the world under any circumstances when we choose to do so, he says. There you have it. And the same general, well, it's a message that focuses, if you notice, on the fact that the conflict is there, that the conflict continues, and that, well, it seems like they're trying to convince us that this has to go on. That's at least what they're trying to do. He also says the following. Let's see. I don't think so. I think that's all. That's everything I have for now. Also, what's going on here? Well, it just came out, right? Let's see if anything else was said. We'll be looking into it. In the meantime, we'll keep going here with the comments and everything. Let me just check if we have any images left to show. I don't think so, right? That seems to be a report, but we'll talk about that later because we're analyzing it regarding the missing general over there in New Mexico. A general, well, who so far hasn't There's no trace of him, and what happened is unknown. He's a general who, at least up until now, the question is whether this is related to cases he investigated or topics related to electronics, electronic advancements, satellite advancements that the Air Force itself has had. We have to remember that he was in charge of the military laboratory for years, which they say is the most important or one of the most important. One of the most important in the Pentagon, so we're going to see a prominent figure. This is important. Well, it's still a mystery for now. We'll also check on the Artemis 2 mission, which is a major historical topic. Now let's go to the comments. Goodbye. Greetings out there. How are you, Francisco? Nina goes, hello. Anibal, how have you been? Greetings to the whole community. Thank you very much, Patro, who is with us. Those of you who share, who give a like, thank you very much for that. Rosa, how have you been? Rosa74, good afternoon. Maria Elena Onofre, a huge hello. Look, she says, good afternoon, community. Checking in from Tehuacan, Puebla, as always. Everything affects the rise in the prices of vegetables and groceries. The price of meat is through the roof. It wasn't just our perception. This time we went to the supermarket. Yeah, we noticed that, there were certain cuts that really shot up and surprised us. But we said, well, maybe it was just temporary or something. Not everything, but it does seem like all the meat. It seems like, yeah, the prices really went up. I don't know what's going on there. Is anyone else noticing this? Cindy, how have you been? Hello there. Eliseo Mariano, how have you been? Yesenia says, how have you been? And a big hello to you too. Patrick, how are you? Omar, a big hello all the way to New York. How have you been, Omar? How are both of you over there? Eliseo, who else is here? Thanks to the whole community. We'll share more info on other topics later, right? We'll probably be back later, but if not, remember that at night we also broadcast the full summary of the information. If there's something important or urgent, we'll upload it in clips, in short clips, just so you stay informed. Follow us on Telegram, Instagram, Facebook, you know all that, right? Great. Christopher says today World War starts. Christopher says, let's hope not, Christopher, but yeah, maybe at least an escalation could happen, right? Greetings, Jose Zarate, how have you been? He also says meat is expensive here. Jose suggests moving to Argentina. I know, right, Jose? Diego says, how are you? Hi, well, here in Honduras, we're waiting to see what will happen tomorrow, Diego says. Diego, let's see. Actually, it's not tomorrow, it's in the next few hours, right? Because now, let's check the time in Iran right now. Let's see, time in Iran. It's 10 at night, 11:12, so in 2 hours. For them, it's already tomorrow. Well, in 2 hours, the deadline is up. So, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen at night. So maybe later we might start seeing some action over there. No, it's already night over there. It's already night. It's already 10 at night. I find it hard to believe they'll release another statement. What comes next will probably be operations, right? From both sides. So let's stay alert to that matter. See you later. Thank you very much for joining me. A big greeting to the whole community. If you want to help the channel, give it a thumbs up. It's free and anyone can do it. And that helps the channel a lot. And if you want to help even more, well, there's a super chat. There are memberships and all that stuff, right? Big greeting. Take care. See you later. Goodbye.